appreciate you being here. This is a really important session for us on the core team because it really matters how you feel about the week and what you're taking away from it, and how we're really excited to talk to you and hear from you and see how we can do things even better next year, we hope. So I just want to introduce our moderators today. I'm Nancy Taylor. I'm the Wilderness and Wild and Scenic Rivers Program Manager for the Pacific Northwest region of the Forest Service. We have Risa Shimoda, who is the Executive Director of the River Management Society. Jimmy Gaudry is the Wilderness and Wild and Scenic Rivers Program Manager for the Northern region of the Forest Service. And Dusty Vaughn is the National Wilderness and Wild and Scenic Rivers Specialist for the Forest Service in the Washington office. And we also have our other members of the core team here as well to be part of this conversation. So really appreciate everyone being here. So we wanted to start off with a word cloud, one of my favorite little activities. They're pretty neat when you see them growing. We want to ask you to share one word that describes this week for you. Wonderful words: humble, community, thought-provoking, overwhelming, energizing. Well, thank you, everyone. That's really appreciate you participating in that, and it'll be fun to soak all that in when we have some more time. Really appreciate your thoughtful responses there. So for our next step, we have a few questions that I'm going to share the time with my friends and colleagues, Lisa and Jimmy and Dusty, and we have a few more questions, and I'll just start us off. And here's where we'd like you to take some time to reflect and think about these questions. And again, share in the chat what you're thinking. Raise your hand again, whatever your style is and how you're most comfortable. And also we very much welcome you reaching out to us after NWSI if you need some more time to think about some of these topics. So the next one is, how will the week's experience help you as you return to your field, program planning, or coordination responsibilities? What have you learned this week that you will bring back to your workplace to share or implement? And Dusty will put that in the chat for us as well, because I know that's a lot to absorb right there. And yeah, take a couple minutes to think about that, and then yeah, please chime in. Thanks, Kelly. I'll use the leadership styles we learn when working with and addressing the crews.
Nancy, I'll add in, a lot of us that have been working remotely from the office, we're starting to transition back into that. So I think that situational leadership, maybe we were high performing before the pandemic, and then we had the shift to working from a different situation, and now we're transitioning back. And so it kind of feels like we're going up and down that situational leadership scale, if you will. So it's good to kind of think through that before we get back together and we're all storming in the office together,
Yeah, I think our jobs so often have a lot of shifts in them as things happen, and boy, the last 2 years have really shown us that. And yeah, it feels like another big shift is coming. It's a really good point. Yeah, great comments here in the chat. Situational leadership presentation offered really good ideas for helping me in my job with visitors and coworkers. Resources that are available to us.
I just wanted to add that, I think it was the first day that Coulter did the presentation that was based on the Forest Service's "This is who we are" module. And so many times in the Wilderness and Wild and Scenic Rivers program and community, it feels like as far as our connection to the broader landscape, we're over here and the rest of the agency sometimes is over here. And I think trying to connect to things like that broader effort and connect how these programs connect is useful for us all to think about. And so anyway, that broader connection of being a part of, or I'm gonna get the wrong term, but more landscape level thinking is good for the program, I think.
Yeah, I was just reading Sarah's comment too, and that, yeah, John's keynote presentation on what kind of ancestor do you want to be? I think that got me thinking a lot about, and it connects with leadership too. It got me thinking about what kind of ancestor do I want to be in my work, and then also in my personal life going forward, and how do I contribute, and what do I leave behind, and what does that mean into the future? And a lot of thinking to do about that. Still going to be asking and answering that question long into the future. I really appreciate your thoughts on that, Sarah.
I'd like to shout out to Rachel's comment, because the folks that she's talking about are really the people who started this. They're the focus of this, and the earlier iterations, the in-person Wilderness Skills Institute, the folks who are out there doing this and who wouldn't attend a conference, they wouldn't get funds to go to another state. They might just be here for the season. And if this helps them, then that's awesome.
To always have this accessible to all and welcome all, and be able to share the information with everybody.
Can I read Pete Irvin's comment and see what we think about that? Always am concerned with timing. I continue to think, without knowing, that quite a few agency folks who have wilderness and wild scenic river as a part of their suite of duties, but not their sole primary duty, miss out on live participation in NWSI, unfortunately. Yeah, a great point, Pete. I've worked with you long enough to know that that timing is always going to be a challenge for something live. Yeah, and for me, and I think each of us may have a different perspective on this, but I think thinking about our audience for this is primarily folks who are going to be field going. It's not solely for them. I think the integration of a director, a chief, or what have you, with field going staff and everyone in between is a huge value and a part of this. But for me, the core has always been providing growth opportunities and skill building for folks who routinely go into the field, and then incorporating the rest with it. And so to do that, this is the time of year traditionally we've looked at. It doesn't mean we have to continue to do that, or there may be another option, but it's a great point.
Hey, Jimmy, I'll jump in too. Thanks, Pete. So Rachel put in a great comment too, which was she's going to take advantage of the fact that these sessions are being recorded. And that is one thing that NWSI has consciously thought about and wants to continue to build sort of a library of videos and references for people to utilize as they move forward. But yeah, it is a struggle to figure out when the timing is most appropriate. The other cool thing about NWSI is because of its virtual nature at this point, we're able to draw people that we wouldn't be able to pull physically to a location for a physical conference. And that gives us a lot of some pretty powerful content. So, but thanks for your comment. But thanks for everybody's comments. Greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I agree. Really thoughtful comments. We really appreciate these. Well, please feel free to continue to jump in on the first question. We'll go on to the second one, which Dusty popped into the chat here, and I'll go ahead and read it. Virtual learning has become a standard framework, tool, and process that complements and supports our day-to-day work in the field and makes education available to all from any location. How would you describe the NWSI as a complement to your river or field-based training? It might have served as a refresher on a topic for which you might not otherwise take time, a more valuable version of an online recording, or a replacement for a topic to which you will not otherwise have access, or other ways that you've thought about it complementing what you're doing already. And this is something we think about a lot on the planning team of what does the future hold? And we know it'll hold change, and we know that we want to make sure that we, again, welcome everyone and offer this to everyone, and make it available. And so how can it complement what people are already doing is something we've thought a lot about, and we don't have all the answers, and we're really looking to see how it fits with what folks are doing locally and regionally and otherwise. Sarah, go ahead.
Hey, yeah, it's kind of a wild idea. I just thought of it, but not that we need more things to do, because I know I kind of have an idea of the amount of work that it's taken to pull this together, but just thinking about, excuse me, I definitely know that these recordings are getting used, and I suggest them to other people's resources. Just something that came to mind was I thought about, sometimes like in a book, at the end of the book, there'll be like a list of discussion questions for like a book club. It might be interesting to capture from some, panelists and people that are kind of engaged in putting together that presentation materials, like what are a couple little discussion questions or something that you might offer as like a companion, to the recording, so that crew leads or whoever it is that's kind of like sharing this in a training session, a supplementary training session, might have something that they could use to kind of take it out of the virtual setting and into a live setting. Obviously that probably is more amenable for some topics than others, but something that came to mind.
Well, I really appreciate that, Sarah, because one of the things we had hoped to do with the whole Wilderness One track, but that was a bit ambitious, it turned out. And we had hoped to do with the Fundamentals of Wilderness session. We just ran out of time, was what happened. And but was to do something like that. And I really love how you framed it of like, how can we kind of create like a lesson plan for people to use so they don't have to reinvent the wheel when they need to do a presentation on the Wilderness Act to, say, a district meeting or something. And then that too, which I hadn't thought specifically about discussion questions, but yeah, some kind of guided way to guide discussions and conversations so that people have that at their fingertips. And so I love that you brought it up, because maybe our idea wasn't so crazy after all. Maybe I hope that would be something that might be helpful for people. Dusty, I saw you come off mute. I'm going to give you space there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was going to say almost exactly what you were going to say, that, yeah, we've been contemplating, what is a future of NWSI. And we really do think that maybe some curriculum development as we shift back to in-person regional trainings, because we've kind of consolidated our trainings for the last 2 years. And so we haven't had as many instructors, right? We've just had a handful of instructors. And the best way to learn something is to teach it, right? And so by just having a few people teach the subject instead of having people across the nation, the world teaching it, we kind of lost the number of instructors. And so, yeah, we want to make sure that we are not replacing field-based instructors, but instead maybe we're providing more resources for them or for new instructors to be able to jump in. Yeah.
Dusty, your comment reminds me also of some of the leadership discussions that we've had of people, leading from where they're at. And so it's also a great opportunity if anyone wants to get more involved and wants to present on something, let us know. And we'd love to make space for you to share what you have with everyone.
So I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb here and sort of reiterate what Dusty has said. So, is it best to teach someone how to cook a loaf of bread or give them a loaf of bread? And, Carhartt National Wilderness Training Center has been sort of the premier training center for wilderness content over the years. And to tell you the truth, I think we can do a better job at Carhartt of empowering local folks to teach and take on that role of imparting wilderness knowledge, skills, and abilities with people. So that's my goal, to help people get to the point where they feel comfortable providing wilderness content to folks in particular. And again, the work that Nancy did with Ben is a prime example of that. Ben wanted to be able to present something, and it's like, yeah, let's make that happen. So I totally support it. And if any of the folks, are interested in trying to find a way to put on something locally for their folks, and they want either a little bit of content or maybe just some suggestions on resources, I'm more than happy to help out.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, we're hoping that we can do more with that. That's great. Jimmy, go ahead.
Hey, I'm just liking the creative ideas in the chat, and the idea, Christy, about the audio recordings. I just to share, had this thought a while back about really targeted audio recordings for learning, especially for wilderness staff in the field. And back in the day, bringing something and listening to it while you were working was maybe ethically frowned upon internally, but plenty of people do it. So having something to listen to at night or in the evening, especially if you're out there by yourself, that would build your knowledge, and having that accessible would be really cool. And so that's potentially a future project. And that connects to the other thought, and that some of the sessions we shared this week were recorded, and some of them were recorded because the experts in these fields are field going staff who needed to be in the field this week. And so I think the ability to use those recordings and to optimize the skill sets we may be missing because those field staff weren't available this week might be another way for us to build on things that we can share in the future.
So I'm going to grab Christy and Dusty's interchange there and just say that the idea of a podcast library is really fun to think about. And we took, 12 National Public Lands Days videos and had an intern at the college convert them all to podcasts, and with a little bit of introduction. And they're very well used, and we're uploading them to a lot of places. I love that idea, and I don't recall ever hearing that idea before. So the podcast library sounds really fun.
Okay, so our next question is a shorter one. What can we do to make NWSI 2023 unique and better? Here we are, the last afternoon, and everyone on the core team is already starting to think about what we might do next year and beyond. We're looking ahead to how this might evolve.
Guess it's all downhill from here.
Oh, Lee, there's an idea, Dusty, right there. Yeah, facilitated workshops. I like that. Kind of talked with people about that, about different things, and haven't really tackled it yet. I like that. Some creative, some field exercises.
I liked Rachel's comment about field exercises, but just a heads up, Rachel, you might be the one asked to help out with that. So
I'll take a moment here to, we are continuing to think about how NWSI is going to evolve. And we really do hope that our regional in-person trainings do return to in-person. And so what does that mean for NWSI is something that the core team is trying to figure out. Do we, last year it was 5 days and we shortened it down to 3. That felt really good for on this side, at least. And so if people are in week-long sessions, or like the Southern Appalachian Wilderness Stewards, they're in a 2-week-long session. It may not make sense to have like 3 long afternoons of session or days of sessions. Maybe it's a keynote and maybe 2 or 3 other presentations that we are all watching together live, or are pre-recorded and are shared at those individual sessions together as a constant theme, or consistent theme, I mean. So yeah, those are just things that we are just thinking through, and just passing on that we are open to any and every idea right now as we try to figure out. We have at least a full year before NWSI 2023.
Yeah, and another piece of that is always on my mind too, is that knowing that there are some regions and going beyond the agency to our partners and people who don't currently have a wilderness or wild and scenic rivers community to train with or to reach out to. And so, yeah, thinking about that too. And I know like in Region 6, we really want to get our in-person training back off the ground, but it's hard, not only because of the in-person question, but capacity too, of just people on the planning team. And it's just hard because everyone's stretched so thin. And so I've thought a lot about how do we weave NWSI and what we hope to rebuild here in the region, and then how do we also reach out to people, well, globally, since NWSI is global. How do we reach out to people that are looking for a wilderness and river community to complement what they're doing?
I was just reflecting on that question and thinking that, I don't know, maybe the audience is shifting in the future, if we're in a state where in-person trainings for, certainly for field-based skills are best taught in person, but it might be interesting to kind of take a look at what how or if the audience might change given how things are moving with resuming to in-person operations, and then or maybe this focus for the skills that NWSI is emphasizing is going to shift a little bit more. I don't have specific topics to offer there, but I do think there's still like a real need for this accessible training. Certainly the reach that you can get and the expertise that you can bring in. Any given unit or region isn't going to be able to capitalize on that with an in-person training. And so I guess I'll just put in a vote for keeping the spirit alive and keeping it going. Maybe I can help.
Make my heart sing, Sarah, because I really want to do that too. And something just popped in my mind, and just again going out on a limb of let's throw some ideas around. I wonder if there's I was thinking about the workshops on issues that you suggested, and if we kind of have a focus. I mean, I don't know if we'd want to have the whole week or 3 days focused on one issue because we have so much to think about, but just maybe like we have a day set aside for workshops on these really hot topics that we're thinking about, wildfire or visitor use or something. I mean, we kind of have that with the tracks, but getting into that idea of workshops or field-based exercises or something like that, and kind of having that a day in there of focusing to kind of mix it. I also just, I'm sorry, totally thinking out loud here, but kind of mixing up the days a little too, in terms of how it's presented. So anyway, probably need to think that through a little more before I spout off about it, but thanks, Rachel. It wasn't totally crazy. Well,
Hey, I was gonna jump in on that and just recognize that we're also balancing this with a couple other things that happen on a national basis, right? One is the River Management Society workshop that occurs. I think Risa helped me out. Is that every other year? Yeah, and then the National Wilderness Workshop, which happens once a year, and I know as a community we're really looking at like what is different here than what may be going on there. And I think the core team will continue to need to ground ourselves in the original vision we put together last year, which I will admit I haven't looked at in a while, and so I'm not going to try and go into it. But I do think it was very training focused, and so I personally almost cringe through the week when I hear someone call this a conference or a workshop, even because the intent is to impart skills at the core for me. And again, we have a bunch of us here who've pulled this together, but I would hate to see us get pulled too far out of that kind of direction.
yeah, good points, Jimmy.
Well, Jimmy, one thing that I really appreciate about NWSI is that we have those, skills that are the very basic intro skills that are going on, but we're also having like larger picture conversations as well. And maybe that's somewhere where NWSI can help, those regional efforts that are very much focused on those field skills, like how to pack a backpack and backcountry nutrition, that kind of stuff, visitor interactions, that we also elevate the conversation to include diversity, equity, and inclusion, and other things like that that are larger picture that hopefully help seep into those field skills as well as we're interacting with folks out in the field and in the landscape that we work in.
Yeah, I want to be clear that I consider those all to be skills that we need to be developing. And I don't know where that line is between a conference and a workshop, but I do think there is a line, and it's one of those things that people seem to know when we get to it. And I would hate for us to be at some point in that like conference category, because I don't think that's what we intended.
Right. Well, please keep sharing your thoughts on that. And again, if something pops in your mind after this, we really welcome you letting us know. So we'll, but for now, we'll go on to this next question that Dusty popped in the chat. What was a highlight and or an aha moment from the week for you? Could be the most moving presenter, the most surprising topic, or even the most entertaining virtual background by an attendee. I guess the alternative question, I'd put it in there for something else to think about. So you can kind of put these in as a couple different questions and tackle either one or both if you want to think those through for a minute or so.
I had one, and it was one that I was moderating in the visitor use management track, and it was Lisa Ronald's excellent presentation. She made a number of wonderful points, but she at one point was showing us pictures of people who are significant in some way to the wilderness world, and asked if we could recognize them. And everyone got Aldo Leopold, and everyone got, the people, the founders of the wilderness movement. And very few people got people who are not necessarily newcomers to the movement, but who belong to groups that are not old white men, essentially. And her message was, though, that you tend to hear and count and put weight on and remember and revere and applaud news that is relevant, that where the arena of information is relevant to you. If you don't care about BIPOC issues, the first Black person who did such and such is just not going to, you might hear it, it's just not going to resonate with you. You won't remember it. And that's a sifting that we do based on our own, you can call it biases, but our own filters. And all the examples that she gave of people who were truly significant that I didn't know. And then there were a couple that are pretty nichey that like no one, very few people got Rachel Carson. I got Rachel Carson because I live near her house and I'm old. So I remember, I read that book when it came out, or I was new when I was young. So just that filtering was a huge aha to me. And we do with that what you will, but it was huge for me. Very interesting.
That's a good one. I think I had a similar one when I saw her presentation in a different forum. And yeah, makes a lot of sense to join us in this. This is just, I don't know, there's so much to think about in all that you're contributing here, everybody. Thank you for that. So yeah, why don't we go ahead and do our next word cloud, if we're ready for that, Angie. Well, as folks are finishing that up, I just want to thank you all so much for being here and open it up to the rest of my colleagues on the core team for any closing thoughts you might want to share in our last couple minutes here.
Nancy, I think that there are 44 people here at this part of the week is astounding. Besides the people who are the top of the road that, of course, we've been very committed to this, but that really reflects folks' interest and care. The comments that we've seen are really wonderful. So really appreciate it. And I learned a lot and I got to meet some great people and continue to be committed to this. So really appreciate those who are here right this second, particularly in addition to the 550 whatever people who signed up at some point along the line.
Hey, we need to continue to thank all the folks who presented. I mean, people really do put a lot of effort into pulling presentations together, and for everyone who served as a Zoom host or moderator. I don't know what our number of people working on this is, but it's a lot, and it's a great team effort. And so just a shout out to all those folks. And yeah, this has been cool. Thanks for being with us this week.
For coming throughout this whole week, and also thanks to everyone who's been involved. And it's a really fun event. I think I get to step outside of my wheelhouse and get to learn a little bit about things that I might not have otherwise. And I hope other people found the same opportunity during this week and can go back and look at some of the videos and the things that we missed, because there's still a lot of great content that was made this week that I haven't even gotten to see yet. So yeah, I just want to say thanks to everyone for joining us and sticking with us this whole week. And it's been a really fun time. So I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. Just really appreciate you being here, and we'll see you next year.